I know, I usually open the wine later on in the video, but I just couldn't wait. I'm a little bit thirsty today. Hello, welcome back to the Grape Explorer. Hope you're all keeping well. Today it's the A to Z of wine, and we're going to be talking about Cabernet Sauvignon, one of the world's most popular grapes, and of course one of the world's most widely planted and produced. If you're new to this channel, welcome. I'm the Grape Explorer. On this channel we do wine education, product reviews, and lots of wine tastings, and every now and then I like to focus on a particular grape. This one today, Cabernet Sauvignon. So as with other videos in this series, we're going to be talking about the history, how it performs in the vineyard, in the winery, and what you can expect from those all-important aromas and flavours. So let's get started with this one and talk a little bit about the history of this grape. Cabernet Sauvignon is the offspring of Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc. It is believed to have crossed around the 17th century, and it was most popularly planted around that time in Bordeaux, particularly in the Merlot region, where the first estates known to have actively grown the variety were Chateau Mouton and Chateau d'Armagnac in Pauillac. In 1961, a crossing of Cabernet Sauvignon and Grenache produced the French wine grape Marselan, and it has produced some other crossings as well. What's interesting about Cabernet Sauvignon is how well it grows. Sauvignon is actually a derivative of a French word meaning wild, and I think that talks a little bit to just how freely and easily this particular vine grows. So when we're coming on to talking about where in the world is it grown, it's not going to come as a surprise to learn that it is pretty much everywhere. And it really is produced in almost every wine producing country, and it grows across a very broad climatic range as well. So we just touched on Bordeaux on the last slide there. Cabernet Sauvignon plantings in the Bordeaux wine region actually account for more than 60% of the total Cabernet Sauvignon grown in France. It was first introduced to the Piedmont region of Italy in 1820, and to this day is very popular in our Super Tuscan type wines as well. It is permitted in numerous Spanish DOPs, and then across the rest of Europe and the Mediterranean you can find it in a number of countries. Some of those I've listed here, so Central Europe, Czech Republic, Hungary, Slovenia, moving further east to Moldova, Romania, Georgia, Turkey, Bulgaria and the Ukraine. And then the Mediterranean, thinking about wine regions like Cyprus, Greece, Israel and Lebanon, where it's really popularly grown in the Bekaa Valley. If you think about the wines from Chateau Mouton, very popular indeed. Cabernet Sauvignon is one of the component grapes in that blend. And then moving from the old world over into the new world, we're talking about places like California. And I just wanted to highlight that the 1976 Judgment of Paris wine tasting event really helped to catapult California Cabernet Sauvignon onto the international stage. That was the event where Californian Cabernet Sauvignons were pitted against some of the very best from France, and actually the Californian wines came out on top in that tasting. You'll also find in the US notable plantings in Washington State and Oregon, although it is planted in other states as well. And then Cabernet Sauvignon is going to be grown in nearly every South American country, and I've listed a few here: Chile, Bolivia, Brazil, Peru and Uruguay. In the 1970s, the Coonawarra region of Australia first brought international attention to their Cabernet Sauvignons. It remains to this day the most widely planted red grape in South Africa, and in New Zealand it has smaller plantings, but you will still find plantings, particularly in the North Island, where it's a little bit more temperate around areas such as Hawke's Bay. So as you can see, it really is grown everywhere, and I think that speaks to the ease with which the vine grows, although that doesn't necessarily mean that it's always going to produce great fruit, because Cabernet Sauvignon is very much influenced by the climate within which it's grown. So let's think about that in the vineyard. How does it perform when it's being grown through the vineyard cycle? Its suitability for whether it will become a varietal wine or whether it will be blended is really heavily influenced by the warmth of the climate. The vine is one of the last major grape varieties to bud and ripen, but it does thrive in a variety of vineyard soil types. The vine itself is prone to vigorous yields, which of course those excessive yields can result in less concentrated, less flavourful wines. And that is again another consideration for why it's popular in blends. So you've got that climatic influence. You know, those cooler climates are really going to give some different characteristics to a warmer climate, which is why it's popularly blended with other grape varietals. And so just touching on that, when we do move into the winery, the wines that are produced, as with the activity in the vineyards, are very much dominated by the climate. The grape berries themselves are quite small. They have a particularly thick skin, which really introduces the wine considerably. That thick skin is typically producing deeply coloured wines, and you can expect high tannin and high acidity as a single varietal. The use of oak in Cabernet Sauvignon is incredibly popular, adding a lot of vanilla and baking spices types aromas. And of course, we often associate Cabernet Sauvignon as a blended wine, particularly when we're thinking about some of those Bordeaux wines. It's most notably blended with the likes of Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot and Malbec. However, it has been known to be blended with some other grapes as well, and there's some examples there. Now, I've been touching on climate quite a lot, and as we move on to talking about some of the characteristics in your glass, the aromas and flavours, there's one particular aroma that I do want to touch on where wines are grown in perhaps cooler conditions, or perhaps they've under-ripened through the season, and that is the green bell pepper aroma. It's caused by something called pyrazines in the grape, and it's prevalent in those under-ripened grape. Pyrazine compounds are present in all Cabernet Sauvignon grapes and are gradually destroyed by sunlight as the grape continues to ripen. And that's where the winemaker is going to be starting to think about whether to produce their Cabernet Sauvignon as a single varietal or as a blend. Because if you have got something underripe, or if you've gone through a slightly cooler season, you don't necessarily want those green, stalky characteristics to be dominating the wine. But let's talk about some of the other characteristics that you would get from either a cool climate or from a warm climate. So in a cool climate, some of the aromas that are more noticeable, and some of the things that I actually really enjoy myself, are the minty, the menthol type aromas you can get. That can be coupled with things like blueberry and red currants as well, but of course with the cool climate, be mindful of some of those stalkier green pepper type aromas. And then moving into warmer climates, this is where you really start to get a real variety of aromas coming through. So things that I've highlighted here are cocoa, blackberry, you can get eucalyptus, you can get black cherry. And of course with that oak aging as well, that's going to give you things like vanilla and baking spices, as I touched on. So what have I been enjoying before I started this video? What am I enjoying in my glass today? Well, as the jumper might suggest, I've gone for Napa Valley. I don't often get Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon. The reason for that is actually in the UK it can be quite expensive. And even though I found what is considered more of an entry-level type Cabernet Sauvignon, it still costs £23, which to me on this channel is actually quite a lot. I've never spent that much on a bottle before. So this is £23, that's about $30. This goes by the name of First Press. It's from the 2018 vintage. Now this one is from Delicato Family Wines in Napa Valley. The wine integrates the quality of Napa Valley with only 90 years growing experience from this particular producer. This rich and complex Cabernet Sauvignon has dark fruit, vanilla and earth, followed by silky tannins, and it pairs really well with steak. Now I only opened it earlier and I've only put a little bit into my glass because I am planning on having something delicious to eat later. But let's go through some of the qualities of this wine. So for me, this is a really deep ruby colour. 2018, talking about those thick skins as well, we've got a really, really deep colour. I actually can't see through this glass at all. Super dark core. On the aroma, the thing that really comes out for me was blackcurrant. That was the first aroma that I got, and for me it's still the dominant aroma in here. But you also get some of those warm, toasty notes as well, and that's where I'm thinking about the oak aging here. I'm thinking about vanilla, I'm thinking about baking spices. But it does have this lovely warming sensation in the glass on the aroma on the nose. On the palate, what have I been getting? On the palate, much more on the fruit side. Really great acidity. And despite this saying the soft tannins, you really can feel a little bit of grip in your mouth with those tannins. For me, on the palate, this one's all about fruit. Wonderful black fruit coming through. I am thinking blackberry, black cherry, a little bit of blackcurrant as well. And for me, this is a real treat to get some Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon in my house. So let's go through some of the other components of this one. This one has a medium plus body. I would say the acidity is medium plus as well. The tannins are probably medium. This one is high in alcohol. It's that warming sensation that I got on the nose, but actually as I'm having a sip of this, I'm feeling myself warming up. My face actually feels like it's glowing a little bit. It might be because I had a bit off camera beforehand, who knows. It's got a really nice length to it. I'm still getting that fruit flavour, even now, even after I put my glass down about a minute ago. And everything for me is nicely in balance. The aromas were those darker fruits, and that matches perfectly with what I'm getting on the palate. It's got a fantastic length. It is quite intense. The flavours really punch through for me. And from a complexity point of view, I wouldn't say it's necessarily complex right now. This one could be laid down until around 2023, so I had another couple of years for this one. But it's from the 2018 vintage, so it's 3 years old. But it's really super enjoyable, and as I say, for me this is quite a special treat. So good. So let me know about your experiences with Cabernet Sauvignon in the comments section below. Any recommendations from yourself and any other grapes you'd like to see featured on the A to Z of Wine. For now, I'm off to enjoy this bottle. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Cheers.